Hey there, once again Khawar saleem-qamar is here with another interesting video. In this course of HTML and CSS, this is lesson number 13, and in this lesson we are going to learn about CSS backgrounds. What is a CSS background? Actually, CSS background is a property that is used to affect the background of an element. There are actually 5 main properties regarding to our background, the elements background, which we can use inside CSS, whereas the 6th property listed right here, the background, is a shorthand property which can use all of these 5 properties in a single place. We are going to talk about it in a minute, but before that, let's talk about these 5 main components and these 5 main properties which are really important to understand the 6th one. So the first property is background color. This property actually specifies the color of the element, the background color of the element. You can use any sort of color properties, any sort of color formats that we talked about in our previous lesson, and if you didn't see our previous lesson, then maybe you won't not be able to get the pretty idea of what that I am going to depict in this video. So we are going to use the format of RGB, RGBA, or the hex colors, or there is another format which are the predefined colors which are predefined in CSS. So let us go to our IDE, and in this video we are going to practice each of the property along with as we would read its theory. Right here, as you can see in our editor, these are the lessons that we covered in our previous videos, previous lessons in this course of HTML and CSS. So for today, I am going to create a new file named as lesson 13, as this is the lesson 13, and in this lesson we are going to learn about CSS background .html. And in this file, I am going to create the basic boilerplate, and in this boilerplate, I am going to give the CSS background as the title of our HTML markup. And in this pages, I am going to create an element, a div element. Let us give it a text of this is the only text. Let us style it a bit by using an internal CSS, and if you don't know how to write the internal or external CSS and how to connect all these CSS with our HTML, you can use our previous videos to get a reference and understand how do we write that. So let us create a style tag for internal CSS. In this internal CSS, I am going to style this div, and in this div I am going to give it the width of 100%. So these are some properties which we have not learned yet. We are going to learn them in our upcoming lectures. So for now, just get the results or see the results in this practice, because the main property today we are going to learn is background. So for that depiction, I have to set up a bit of environment, so you can see how do I set up that environment for that experiment. So for height, I am going to give it the height of 100 view height, and flex display. Don't worry, we are going to talk about all of these properties in our upcoming lessons, so don't worry about them if you are not getting the idea behind them right for now. So display flex, justify content center, align items center, display flex, not flex display. That was a pretty silly mistake, as in browser you can see our text is in middle. So this is it for this setup. Now we are going to see our first property, which is background color. So right inside our CSS, I am going to give it the background color of orange, which is the predefined color inside CSS. So as you can see in our browser, this is the predefined orange color. As if you are able to see these paddings or the margins inside a document. So we talked about it, that how to remove them and what are these padding for inside our document in our previous lessons. So if you are not following with us from the first lesson, then maybe you are missing a lot. So after this, color background color property. In this property, the value could be in different formats. So you can refer to our previous video if you are not familiar with different formats that we can use in CSS. After this background color property, we have the opacity of the background. As you have guessed that opacity or transparency means the color or the background which we are using, it is related to its transparency. So the property used for it is background opacity. Sorry, not background opacity, it is just opacity. In this opacity, we are going to specify the opacity of the background. For example, if I may give 0 right here, you can see it is completely disappeared. This is the opacity of the complete element. As you can see, the text has also disappeared, which is not the background, it is the foreground. So if I may give it the opacity of 0.5, it means it would be 50% transparent and 50% opaque. As you can see, the color is 50% transparent and 50% opaque, as the original color is orange. After the opacity, I'm going to comment both of these properties because we have got the idea for them, and for now I am keeping them as a record for you so that when you would get this lesson file or the study files, you may understand them easily. So if you would want to get these files, you can get it inside the description, the link would be there. After the background, after that property, we have the next property, which is background image. And this property specifies an image that we want to use as a background of our element that we are styling right here inside our IDE. Let us go and grab an image so that we can use it as a reference and get it as a background inside our document. Let's go to Google, and in this Google, I am going to search for images. Let us pick an image. I think this one would be a better one. Yeah, I am going to download it right inside this assets folder in our directory and give it a bit of simplified text, which is test background. Our image is saved now, as you would be able to see in this directory. This is the image that we just downloaded. After this, I am going to use that image as a background of this div tag. So for that, I'm going to write the property background image, and this property gets a URL function, and this URL function contains the path to that file. For this project, we are going to give the relative path, and as we have learned completely about this relative path, that how do we give it. So this is the assets folder, which is in the same folder as in which our lessons file is placed. After this, I would open this assets folder, and in this assets folder we have test background.webp image. This is the image that is now set as background image of this div tag. Let us go to our browser and see how does it look. Right here, as you can see, the image is really big, that it is exceeding our background. So our next properties are going to use an image that should be having a smaller size as compared to our screen. So let us make this image a bit smaller so that we can get that depiction as well. So inside here, I have created a new file which is a bit of small. So I have given it a new name, which is test background small. So let us give the path of this file to our browser the test background small. The extension of this file is changed as well, so we have to give the right extension as well, which is the .png. And inside our browser, as you can see, that the image is repeating itself. As it is a smaller image, it is repeating itself in x-axis as well as in y-axis. So our next property is regarding that repeat. So by default in CSS, that image is repeated in x-axis as well as in y-axis. So if we want to restrict it to repeat in a specific direction only, or if we want to restrict it to repeat it in any direction, then we can do it as well. So right here you can see these different values that we give for it. Repeat x, which will allow the image to repeat only in a horizontal direction, and repeat y will only repeat it in y direction, whereas for no repeat it won't repeat it. Right here inside our IDE, we can see if I give it background repeat property to repeat x, so we have to keep this background image property here as well. If we right now see here inside our browser, the image is just repeating in our x direction, whereas in y direction it is just restricted. So if I may replace this value completely by repeat y, it would just be repeated in our y axis, whereas it could be repeated or replaced by no repeat, which will completely stop it from repeating itself, whereas in this browser you can see it is not repeating itself. So in our next slide, we are going to learn about background position. This is actually a property in CSS which will tell CSS that in which direction do we want our image to be placed. Right in browser, as you can see, our image is on upper left corner, and if we want it to be in upper right corner, then we can do so as well. Right inside this CSS file, I would give it background position of top right top. As you can see, our background image has just shifted towards right side. After this, if we want all of these properties, all of this background node to move along with our background, as if I may show you an example for it, let us extend this text to lorem 500, as this is a really big text but not enough. Maybe let us see in our browser. So I want to give a bit of depiction so that we could be able to move or scroll the page. Right, as inside this document you are able to see, as I scroll, the image is scrolling by our document along with our document, because by default it is scroll, which means it specifies background image should scroll with the rest of the page, whereas if we may change the default values to fixed, then it would not scroll the image along with all the other documents. So inside this document, if I may write background attachment property, and in this property, if I may write fixed, in this document, as you can see, this image would not scroll now. And if I may write scroll here, it would then scroll along with our document. So the last property of this lesson is the background. This is a composite property which could use all of these above read properties in a single line. As in this example, you can see this background property is containing the hex value of that color, the URL of the image, the repeat function, as well as the position of our image in a single value. So that's it for this lesson. I hope you liked the video. Thank you. Goodbye.